Every 7 years or so, I get a letter in the mail. It's from the US Census Bureau asking me to answer some questions about myself and my household. Questions like, how many bathrooms does your home have? What is the highest level of education you have? And how many people live in your household? Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, don't they do this every 10 years? Well, yes, they do. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. The US does count its population every 10 years. That's by law. The Constitution says they have to. It's so they can make sure that everyone is being fairly represented in government. More people equals more representation. But what if I told you that when it comes to counting the population, the United States is kind of bad at its job? You see, the numbers that the Census Bureau gives out aren't exactly right. Their estimates, there's always a small chance that some people are missed during the head. We call this the census undercount. There are a lot of reasons for this. One is that some people might be hard to reach. Think about the homeless population or people living off the grid. Then there's the undocumented immigrant population who might be afraid to answer questions from the government. Or maybe no one's home when the census worker visits. All of these situations can lead to and it's important to note that the census isn't just some random data collection effort. It is mandated by the Constitution, and the numbers are used to determine things like how many seats each state gets in the House of Representatives, and how much federal funding they receive. So you can see why it's important that we get this right. In fact, in 2020, the first time the census was ever done online, the response rate was only 66%. A lot of people didn't fill it out. But don't worry, the census has some fancy math skills. They can look at things like housing data and make educated guesses about how many people are living in the areas where no one responded. Still, even with all this fancy math, the 2020 census had an overall undercount of about 23 million people. And if you think that might just be a rounding error, you'd be wrong. California, for example, is believed to have been undercounted by about 6.5 million people. That's about 15.6% of the state's total population. And Texas was undercounted by over 2.5 million people, about 9% of the state's population. These undercounts can really mess with government funding. California, for example, is entitled to $45 billion in federal funds based on its population numbers, but because of the undercount, they're only getting about $41 billion. That's a difference of $4 billion. Now, obviously, it's better to get $41 billion than nothing. But it's clear that undercounting people can have real consequences. So what happens now? Well, the census numbers are adjusted to account for the data from things like the American Community Survey and the National Survey of Residential Coverage are used to help fill in the gaps. This process has actually gotten better over the years. In 2000, for example, there was an undercount of about 3.3%. But by 2010, that number had fallen to about 2.1%. This is good news, but it also means that the US population numbers are more uncertain than you might think. When the census was done in 2020, they estimated the population to be about 327 million people. But their best guess, after adjusting for the undercount, is that it's actually closer to 332 million people. That might seem like a small difference, but it's actually a 1.5% margin of error. And that's not great when the entire country's population data hangs in the balance. So yeah, the next time you get a census form in the mail, be sure to fill it out. After all, it's not just you answering questions. You're helping the government count the population so they can make sure everyone is being fairly represented in government and getting their fair share of funding. And if you're good at math, you could probably help the Census Bureau improve its numbers. Apply to be a census taker today. Thanks for watching.